Hoax by NuekerFilms Part 2. Dude, what are you doing? Isaac emerged from behind a pillar on the back porch, carrying a small flower pot in the crook of his arm. What? I am ellipsis sticking into Maggie ellipsis. Well, it just looks like a family of raccoons stopped by for a quick snack, Isaac mocked as he nonchalantly made his way down the steps towards where I stood. What do you expect me to do? I want to scare her. I don't want to vandalize her. You said it yourself, man. You've gotta have a little fun, he said before promptly smashing the flower pot on the brick steps. I saw in Isaac's eyes a spark of liberation. He radiated a sadistic smile with the same whimsy a child might exhibit when showcasing his latest scribbled drawing to his mother. Grant and Cameron copied this motion, turning over the outdoor tables and chairs. I somewhat reluctantly joined in the radical festivities, taking my turn at locating their outdoor furniture, scattering it across the backyard. If I claimed I didn't find the slightest hint of pleasure from my rebellious behavior, I would be lying, but my illusion of living outside of the law was quickly shattered when Isaac took the hoe he was tearing into the flower beds with and used it to smash the shed window. Isaac, what the hell is wrong with you? I rushed over to him and confiscated the tool before he could do more damage. This is awesome. Dude, you've gotta try this. I can't put my hand over his mouth. People down the street can probably hear you. Do you want to get caught? Guys, I think I hear someone. Grant popped his head out from around the side of the house. I was forced to cut my lecture short. I am not letting this come back to bite me in the ass because of your stupidity. Now come on. Just give me a minute, okay? I kept my gaze with Isaac for another moment, waiting for him to realize his idiocy, but he continued to stand there, firm in his decision. I was already antsy, and Isaac's reluctance had only made me more so. My body entered flight mode and I took off, seeking refuge in the wooded area on the side of the house. I ducked under a line of branches and regrouped with Grant and Cameron, who were crouched on the ground, peering through the foliage to look at our masterpiece. Where's Isaac? Grant asked, gasping for air. He's still in the backyard, I said in defeat. He refused to come with me. What? What are we going to do then? Cameron sounded exasperated. Should we go back to the car? I looked around in the woods for Isaac again just in case he had come to his senses. I don't know where whatever caused that noise went. I am not taking any chances. Before Grant could utter another word, the backyard was suddenly cast into a pool of bright yellow light. Near the edge of the light stood a tall, gaunt man with a crooked and hunched spine, silhouetted from the motion light. He heaved violently as if he were now regurgitating its dinner. The man, presumably Maggie's father, proceeded to patrol the rest of the yard, stepping over the furniture strewn all across the grass. He traversed the darkness without as much as a flashlight, peering into the forest as if he were some sort of night watchman. We ducked down further, practically burying ourselves in the dirt. Several minutes must have passed before I got back up on my knees and was able to see the backyard again. The motion sensor light had switched off, and Maggie's father was nowhere in sight, as if the darkness had engulfed him and he had simply assimilated with it. Soon, I heard the familiar crunching of leaves and exhausted whines of Isaac meandering through the woods in our direction. So, what did I miss? Isaac cheerfully pondered, squatting to speak to us at eye level. Where were you? You could've gotten us all caught. I grabbed him by his shoulder and shook him slightly to knock him out of his drunty stupor. Relax. You said you wanted to scare Maggie, and so that's what I was doing. I just needed a little more time, Isaac attempted to reassure me. What were you doing? I demanded. And did you see where that guy went? Grant jumped up. You'll see. And what guy are you talking about? Isaac answered both of our questions in quick succession, neither of which offered me any more of a sense of certainty or comfort towards the events that had just transpired. Maggie's dad or brother or someone came outside and went into the woods looking for us. Isaac, do you know what could happen if he caught you? My paranoia overtook me the more I thought about how reckless this simple operation had become. Dude, ease up already. The point is that we didn't get caught, so will you calm down? I released my grip on Isaac's shoulder, and he spoke again with a hint of annoyance. Now come on, let's go to the car. I eagerly stood up and led a charge out of the woods straight for the car. Next thing I knew, we were driving past the front gate, and I felt as if I was the only person living in an otherwise empty world. The car was eerily silent, as I assumed we were all absorbing the reality of what we had just done. With conscience turning its back on us while the rest of the world slept in peace, we were granted an unprecedented amount of freedom. I still felt the adrenaline surging through my body, forgiving any imminent more repercussions. What had just transpired in Maggie's backyard was, if not for anything else, a chance for a release of all of my pent-up testosterone-fueled energy. Despite my reluctance towards the extent that we took our prank, I couldn't help but laugh a little at the fact we had just gotten away with something so incredibly dangerous, and neither could anybody else. Coherent words seemed to have been omitted from our vocabulary, and we substituted them with hysterical fits of victorious laughter. As long as nobody got hurt, there was nothing wrong with having a little fun. My justification for our catty recklessness and our celebrations altogether came to a screeching halt as we turned down Elizabeth's driveway. A lone two-story colonial-style farmhouse loomed far off in the distance, only made visible by a few scattered lights spilling through the windows. The extensive gravel stretch leading up to the house was narrow and winding. The acres of forest that enclosed the property prevented any sort of artificial light from being put in place. I felt a sense of comfort, coupled with unease, re-entering the property, much like I had felt the countless nights I had slept over here as a child, and the subsequent times I had snuck out with Elizabeth to go exploring in the endless expanse of towering trees. Our party reached the assembly of cars parked on a small patch of grass off to the side of the yard. We parked and made our way around the side of the house. Positioned around a small fire pit in the center of the backyard were Riley, Grace, Caroline, and Elizabeth. We approached the circle of chairs. The girls halted their conversation right as we came into view. It was evident by their evasive looks that we were the topic of conversation. So ellipsis, where are the snacks? Riley Grace broke the silence with her knowing and snide remark. The store was ellipsis out ellipsis. Isaac stumbled to find the words as he sauntered over to where his girlfriend was sitting. Out of snacks. Completely out of snacks. Riley Grace gave off a look of stern judgment. Babe, we're here now. That's all that matters. Isaac sought to mitigate Riley Grace's stress by wrapping her arm around his shoulder, but she rejected his offer without a word, shrugging her arm away and closing her body off. She seemed a tad more irate than what was justified. She then directed all of her attention towards Isaac, lecturing him with her familiar loud whispering technique. You guys are so stupid, do you realize that? Elizabeth said in a more jovial, sarcastic manner, but Caroline echoed that with a bit of condescendence. I could tell she more disapproved of our antics, but she'd come around. Despite her public perception, she wasn't a monster. She was still my friend. A bit of an asshole, but still. I don't know what you're talking about. I played up this ignorant character with a subtle grin in an attempt to keep the mood light. Caroline turned sharply to look at Elizabeth with a look of disgust on her face, as if she were outright appalled by my attempt at a joke. Okay, look, this isn't anything to get that upset about. Grant tried to alleviate any building tension, but his efforts became futile as Riley Grace stood up, on the verge of tears. Am I wrong to get upset about this? You guys have no idea what you could be getting into. Riley Grace stomped off in the direction of her car without uttering another word. Isaac followed closely behind, vanishing around the wall of the house. The rest of us sat dumbfounded at what we had just witnessed. Any further conversation was postponed for what seemed like hours, as we waited for them to return. However, we finally got our answer in the form of the sounds of doors slamming and car engines roaring. The night progressed awkwardly, those of us who remained never able to hold a conversation for very long, as our words tended to come back to either Riley Grace and Isaac or what we had done. The lingering apprehension fizzled out at the dwindling fire. All interest in stoking up another conversation died off soon after, and so we ended up calling it a night rather early. Cameron was the next to leave, claiming his father wanted him home immediately, which left both Grant and I in the inconvenient situation of needing a ride. Grant wasn't too far behind, calling his brother to come get him. I didn't leave until some time later though, as I had gotten locked into small talk with Caroline, trying so desperately to remedy the animosity left over from earlier but to no avail. Coupled with the expanse of trees that surrounded me on all sides, I was accumulating the feeling of crippling and inescapable tension, for one reason or another. I could blame some combination of residual adrenaline and a general minute fear of the dark for this, but that doesn't excuse the fact I genuinely felt uneasy sitting there. At ellipsis I should go ellipsis, I said, eager to seek refuge in my home away from the hostility from tonight that seemed to be infecting more hosts as time passed. Do you need a ride? Elizabeth's face perked up, and I caught her gaze through the wafting embers of the now spluttering fire. Well, ellipsis yeah, but you don't need to, I stammered. No, it's fine, I don't mind. And Caroline was just leaving anyway. Caroline eyed Elizabeth, and Elizabeth turned her head away and giggled slightly, covering her mouth with her sleeve, as if she had a reason to be embarrassed. A few flames seemed to reach out and touch her, and the constant orange glow on her face resembled a wave crashing onto and receding from the shore. We said our goodbyes and hurriedly made our way from the safe haven of the warm fire through the icy chill of the outside air to Elizabeth's car, a rusting and battered red Ford F-150. The top of her head barely extended past the door handle. Since when do you drive a truck? I couldn't help but laugh at a combination so bizarre. Since my dad bought a new one. I like it. Elizabeth returned the favor with a playful smile as she climbed into the driver's seat. Then he has her name, for the record. Ellipsis, his name is All Red Ellipsis. We had finished coasting off of our laughter once we had reached the end of her driveway. I was reaching for anything I could say to keep a conversation going. What a night, huh? I sighed with a vague yet blanket statement as do not tread on any sensitive grounds. Tell me about it. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. Do you think Riley Grace and Isaac ever made up? Her mention of Riley Grace reassured me I was clear to carry on about the sensitive topic. Hard to say. She seemed pretty upset, I said. She seemed to be overreacting a little to the whole thing, right? There's a lot more to it than just that, Elizabeth confessed. She was telling us before you guys showed up ellipsis they fight about a lot of things, and this prank thing was really just the breaking point of it all. I figured that much, I said. Isaac talks sometimes about how she can be really overbearing. He just wants to live his life. Well, she just cares about him, Elizabeth said defensively. You have to admit he can be kind of off the wall at times, and she's not really like that. That's gonna lead to some dumb decisions and some fighting, nothing major if nobody makes a big deal out of it. Well, what do you expect to happen when an unstoppable object hits an immovable object? There was an awkward silence hanging between us, and I felt uncomfortable speaking in place of Isaac, so I tried to divert the subject. What do you think of all of this? The prank, I mean. What do you mean? Elizabeth asked. You seemed so interested at first. What made you change your mind? I turned in her direction and saw her shift anxiously in her seat. My parents said I could have people over ellipsis, and you know that doesn't happen often ellipsis. Elizabeth scrambled to put together a logical excuse. I saw the way Caroline was looking at you earlier. What was that all about? She ellipsis she thinks this is all pretty stupid ellipsis, but you don't? I suggested. Elizabeth seemed to hold her breath before exploding in a fury of words. Being around those girls so often can get so boring. I want to go out and try new things, be adventurous, like when we were kids. Elizabeth spoke with a hint of difficulty. I mean, if you wanted to hang out with Emma ellipsis or guys more, I wouldn't mind at all. I flashed a quick grin, subtly hinting at my underlying intentions. Thanks, we don't really hang out as much as we used to. I kind of miss it, Elizabeth smirked, hinting at something more than just her words on the surface. But I would feel bad because of Caroline. What does she have to do with it? I asked. You know, she doesn't really have any other girlfriends ellipsis. She loves you guys, but when things ellipsis or people ellipsis don't go her way, she can get pretty upset. And if I just abandon her to go off on some dumb guy's night that she clearly doesn't support, I don't know what she'd do. It's like I'm betraying her. Elizabeth exhaled deeply, as if she had been restraining herself for a long time. Well, Elizabeth, I declared in a similar manner to a game show host, the benefit of Caroline being your friend and not your girlfriend is that if you were getting bored, you can go spend your time with ellipsis someone else ellipsis, and she's going to get over it eventually. She's a theater kid. She's naturally dramatic. I know, it's just that everyone's a little agitated right now and I don't want to get in the middle of it. She sighed in exhaustion. No, I promise tonight was a one-time thing ellipsis. It was just for a reaction. It will die off in a couple of days and, hopefully, everyone can just chill for a while. I paused for a moment to see if I had elicited any sort of reaction from Elizabeth. I then decided to switch gears, tripping over myself while trying to be more concise with my words and less belligerent towards her friends. You're a lot of fun to be around, and ellipsis I don't know ellipsis we should hang out, like just us ellipsis. Elizabeth deliberated on my last statement, and I could feel the embarrassment swell inside of me. Maybe sometime soon. Ellipsis after things die off. She smiled affectionately as we pulled into the high school parking lot, and my anxieties melted away. I thanked her for the ride and I sped home, longing for that night to come to an end. The biting chill of the mid-October air was a particularly uninviting creature to wake up to early the next Monday morning. The events that comprised the rest of my weekend had smoothly blurred together, as they paled in comparison to Friday night's excursion. At first glance, the rest of the world seemed entirely unaffected by our hijinks. The other students shuffled on through their school day with the usual miserable glum and hushed whispers that were associated with high school. However, once I entered the more intimate environment of our theater class rehearsal room for my final class of the day, I was able to more closely decipher the details of everyone's quiet chatter. It was Isaac that first approached me about the article. He held a copy of our local newspaper in his hand, transfixed. From where I was standing, I noticed the photograph displaying what looked to be the side of a wooden house. What is this? I took the paper and examined it closer. The photo was indeed the side of a wooden structure, but it was small, more like a shed. It was then that I noticed the shattered window in the top left corner of the frame, and the message carved into the wood next to it. I am coming for her next. Beneath the message was inscribed a crude carving of a pentagram. The title of the article read, Local Family Terrorized in Night by Unknown Threat. I felt my heart sink. Dude, this is great. Isaac spoke, his eyes full of an unsettling wonder. Isaac, this isn't anywhere near great ellipsis. My hands started to tremble slightly, but Isaac seemed not to notice, continuing to peruse the article. Yeah, I think the article kind of romanticized the whole event a bit too much for my taste, and the title is way too on the nose, and that picture didn't get the most flattering angle of my work. But hey, around here that's the best you're going to get. No, I mean, what if the police start looking into this? We're in the paper for crying out loud. Oh, you haven't even seen the best part. Isaac pulled out his phone and pulled up several Facebook posts. At least half a dozen people from around town I either knew or knew of had described waking up to their yards torn to shreds by something in the night with pictures as proof. The exact details varied between accounts, but they all seemed to carry a single similarity, the crude pentagram. Isaac started laughing giddily.